Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty profound. Uh, it's not just another self-help trend or a quick fix, but a philosophy that's been around for centuries.
That's right. We're talking about Stoicism.
Stoicism, exactly. It's like this incredibly robust mental operating system, think of it
Wow.
that way, to help you deal with, well, everything. Life throws your way, really.
Yeah.
The ups, the downs, the curveballs.
Yeah, and not just deal with them, but thrive in the face of them.
Exactly. And to cultivate a real sense of well-being no matter what's going on around you.
And what's fascinating is that Stoicism has this really compelling origin story. It all started with this guy Zeno of Citium around 300 BC.
Zeno of Citium, okay.
Now, he wasn't a philosopher in the beginning. He was actually a merchant, a Cypriot merchant.
Oh, interesting. So not something you'd immediately associate with, deep philosophical thought.
Right, exactly. But as the story goes, he suffered a major shipwreck, lost everything he had.
Wow. A real turning point in his life then, huh?
Yeah, you could say that. And ironically, this devastating loss actually led him to philosophy in Athens.
So this shipwreck, this huge setback, kind of became the catalyst for his philosophical journey.
It did. He started exploring different schools of thought, studying with various teachers in Athens.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, and ultimately he kind of synthesized all these different ideas into this unique and really resilient philosophy, his own version.
It makes you wonder how many great things, inventions, ideas come from those unexpected moments of, adversity.
Right, those detours in life, those moments that force us to reevaluate.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of names, where does the term Stoicism actually come from?
Well, it's actually named after the place where Zeno began teaching his philosophy.
Oh, okay.
The Stoa, which were these covered colonnades in the Athenian marketplace.
So imagine like these public walkways bustling with activity, people going about their daily lives. And in the midst of all that, you've got Zeno sharing these profound ideas about living a good life.
Exactly. It wasn't some exclusive philosophy reserved for the elite. It was for everyone, and that's a key part of its appeal, I think.
It's very democratic in a way, accessible to people from all walks of life.
Right, and another striking thing about Stoicism is its practicality. It's not about getting lost in abstract theories. It's about equipping yourself with tools to deal with real-world problems.
Yeah, the everyday stuff we all grapple with, like making tough decisions, dealing with setbacks, frustrations, even, the bigger things like loss, grief, temptation.
Yeah, the whole spectrum of human experience, and it's designed to help you navigate all of it with resilience and wisdom.
And what's really interesting is that Stoicism attracted this really diverse following people from all social classes. You had Epictetus, who started his life as a slave.
Right, a powerful example of finding freedom within even the most constrained circumstances.
And then you have Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful Roman emperors.
Yeah, embracing these principles from a position of immense worldly power and responsibility.
So it's clearly not limited to any one social class or situation. These ideas resonated with people in vastly different circumstances, and that speaks to, its fundamental human relevance.
Definitely. So for our deep dive today, we're going to be drawing from this YouTube transcript by Fitness Revolutionario, who does a great job of breaking down Stoicism.
Perfect. And our mission is to really distill the core principles and practical applications of Stoicism from this transcript. So you, our listener, can quickly grasp the essence of it all.
Yeah, and hopefully walk away with some insights and tools that you can actually apply in your own life.
Exactly. So why don't we start with one of the most fundamental ideas in Stoicism, the concept of virtue as the key to living a good life. And this is closely tied to this idea of eudaimonia, which is often translated as happiness.
Right, eudaimonia. Okay, so what exactly does that mean in a Stoic context?
Well, it's more than just, fleeting happiness or pleasure for the Stoics. It's this deeper sense of fulfillment, self-realization, even flourishing, I guess you could say.
It's about reaching your full potential as a human being.
Right. It's about bridging that gap between who you are now and the best version of yourself you can possibly be.
I like that. And the transcript emphasizes that the Stoics believed that virtue was absolutely essential for achieving this eudaimonia.
Virtue. Okay, so not just a nice to have, but like a fundamental requirement.
Exactly. They saw it as both necessary and sufficient for that state of flourishing.
And the transcript breaks down these 4 cardinal virtues that are really at the core of Stoic ethics.
Right. So we have wisdom, which is about, constantly seeking knowledge, understanding the world around us.
Right, like being a lifelong learner, always curious, always seeking to expand your understanding.
Then there's justice, which is all about treating others with fairness, integrity, even when it's difficult.
Doing the right thing even when no one's watching.
Then we have courage, which isn't just about physical bravery, but also about facing our fears, overcoming obstacles, persevering even when things get tough.
Yeah, the mental and emotional fortitude.
And finally, we have temperance, which is often understood as moderation and self-control, that ability to manage our impulses and desires.
Sometimes it's also referred to as discipline.
Right. Exactly. And the transcript makes this really compelling comparison between developing virtue and military training.
Oh, interesting. So it's not something you just, achieve overnight and then you're done.
Not at all. It's this ongoing daily practice, this constant effort to refine and strengthen these virtues.
Like a muscle, you have to keep working it out.
Exactly. And what I find so remarkable is how relevant these core virtues still are, even in our modern world.
Oh, absolutely. Whether you're a student or a CEO, a parent or an artist, cultivating wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance can lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
No doubt. And closely linked to this idea of virtue is the concept of tranquility or ataraxia.
Ataraxia. Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, it's the state of mental serenity, calmness, inner peace even, you could say.
Like a stillness amidst the chaos.
Yeah, and the Stoics believe there's a direct connection between virtue and tranquility.
So living virtuously actually contributes to a greater sense of inner peace.
Exactly as Seneca put it. There is no peace without a good conscience.
I like that. And the transcript also points out that the reverse is true as well. When our minds are agitated, filled with negative emotions, it becomes way harder to act virtuously.
Yeah, it's like trying to make a clear decision when you're completely stressed out. It's almost impossible.
So cultivating that inner tranquility actually supports our ability to live a more virtuous life.
It does. And speaking of obstacles to tranquility, the transcript identifies our own distorted perceptions of reality as a major culprit.
Oh yeah, we all do that, right? We tend to overreact to things, blow things out of proportion.
Exactly. We let minor inconveniences or disagreements completely derail our inner peace.
And that brings us to this crucial Stoic idea of separating our perceptions from reality.
Right. This is where that famous quote from Epictetus comes in. It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things.
Such a simple statement, but so profound.
It really is, and the transcript really highlights this human tendency to confuse our thoughts with facts.
We automatically assume that our initial reaction, that gut feeling, is an accurate reflection of reality.
But the Stoics understood that's rarely the case. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different interpretations and emotional responses.
Because it's not the event itself that causes our suffering, but the meaning we attach to it, the story we tell ourselves about it.
Exactly. And that's why the Stoics were so adamant about questioning our first impressions, what they called fantasiae.
It's fantasia, like those initial judgments, those knee-jerk reactions we have to things.
Right. And instead of just blindly accepting them as truth, the Stoics urge us to treat them as hypotheses, something to be examined, not definitive pronouncements.
The example they give in the transcript is so clear. If you break a glass, the objective fact is just that a glass broke, but our immediate judgment might be, oh no, I'm so clumsy, I always mess things up.
And that judgment, that's what really sends us spiraling into negativity.
Yeah, so the Stoics are saying, hey, pump the brakes, examine those initial reactions, don't let them run the show.
By consciously analyzing them, we can start to shift our perspective and see things in a more realistic and, well, less emotionally charged light.
So it's about creating that space between the event and our reaction.
Precisely. And that space, that's where our power lies. That's where we can choose a more helpful response.
This reminds me of, that space between a stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl talked about.
Exactly. It's that moment of choice that we have if we can just learn to recognize it.
And that brings us to another key Stoic concept, the practice of attention, or prosoch.
So what is prosoch all about?
It's essentially about cultivating a heightened awareness of what's happening within our own minds. Paying attention to our thoughts, our feelings, our impulses.
Like becoming an observer of our own internal world.
Exactly. And the transcript highlights three major benefits that come from developing this kind of focused attention.
Okay, let's hear them.
So firstly, by taking control of where we direct our attention, we can actually steer our thoughts and actions towards those things that are truly important to us.
So it's about being intentional with our mental energy, not letting it just get scattered by distractions.
Exactly. Secondly, by focusing on the present moment, we can really reduce that suffering that comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Yeah, it's about being fully present in the here and now, which is the only place where we actually have agency.
And thirdly, by strengthening our concentration, we also build our resilience, that capacity to better tolerate those difficult situations when they inevitably arise.
Because when our mind isn't consumed by worries and what-ifs, we're much better equipped to deal with the challenges right in front of us.
Absolutely. The transcript uses this really cool analogy comparing attention to the lamp of the mind.
Yeah.
Illuminating those thoughts and patterns that we might otherwise be completely oblivious to.
Yeah, it's like shining a light into the inner workings of our minds.
And what I find fascinating is how this ancient practice of prosoch actually connects to modern cognitive behavioral therapies, or CBT.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of CBT techniques are really about becoming aware of those automatic thoughts and emotional responses so we can start to understand and potentially modify them.
And even something as simple as just labeling an emotion as it arises, saying to yourself, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now, can make it feel more manageable.
Because it creates that little bit of distance, it helps us to not get so swept away by the emotion.
Exactly. Now let's move on to another foundational Stoic principle, the dichotomy of control.
Oh, this is a big one. So what's the central idea here?
Well, it's about recognizing the crucial difference between what lies within our control and what doesn't. And the Stoics strongly advise us to focus our energy primarily on what we can control.
Which is essentially our own thoughts, our intentions, our actions.
Right. And to cultivate acceptance towards things that are ultimately outside our control, like external events, other people's opinions, even our own health to some extent.
Yeah, because attaching our sense of well-being to things we can't control is a recipe for frustration and suffering.
And this doesn't mean we become passive or give up on trying to influence things in our lives.
Right. The transcript clarifies that it's not about resignation. It's about recognizing that we don't have complete control over the outcomes.
Like, we can make healthy choices about our diet and exercise, but we can't completely eliminate the possibility of getting sick.
Exactly. So the Stoic approach is about putting in our best effort in those areas where we do have agency, but detaching from the final result.
Because ultimately, a lot of factors beyond our control contribute to those outcomes.
Right. The focus should be on the process, not just the outcome.
Yeah, the transcript gives some really helpful examples, like instead of obsessing over a specific weight loss number, focus on making those healthy meal choices consistently.
And instead of getting hung up on a promotion, focus on doing your current job to the best of your ability.
It's about directing our energy towards what we can actually influence and letting go of the need to control everything.
And this leads beautifully into the next concept, amor fati, or the love of fate.
This is one of the most powerful and maybe even counterintuitive ideas in Stoicism.
Yeah, it's about more than just accepting what happens. It's about embracing it, even those things we might initially perceive as negative or undesirable.
The transcript highlights this idea of turning obstacles into opportunities.
It's about finding the potential for growth and learning in every situation.
And the story of Zeno himself is such a perfect illustration of this. He lost everything in that shipwreck, but that very event led him to develop Stoicism.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible example of finding good in what initially seemed like a catastrophe.
And the transcript uses this very vivid analogy, the image of a dog tied to a moving cart.
Oh, I like this one.
So the cart represents those things in life that are beyond our control. It's going to keep moving forward no matter what.
Right. We can't stop the cart.
And the dog has two choices.
Mhm.
It can either resist and get dragged along, suffering the whole way, or it can walk willingly alongside the cart, maybe even enjoying the scenery.
And the destination remains the same, but the experience is completely different.
It's a powerful way to visualize how our attitude and our choices can shape our experience, even in the face of those things we can't control.
And Seneca's famous quote really captures this. Fate leads the willing and drags along the unwilling.
It's about learning to make peace with what is and finding a way to embrace the present moment with all its imperfections.
And that leads us to this idea of Stoic freedom, which is really about mastering our impulses.
Yeah, the transcript challenges this common notion that freedom is about being able to do whatever we want whenever we want.
Right, because the Stoics argue that being ruled by our desires actually leads to a kind of slavery.
If our happiness is constantly dependent on external things or fleeting pleasures, are we truly free?
That's the question they're asking. And they suggest that true freedom lies in our ability to act in accordance with reason and virtue, not to be controlled by those impulsive desires.
It's about having that inner strength to choose what's best for us in the long run, even if it means delaying gratification or tolerating some discomfort in the present moment.
The transcript uses a great example. If someone feels like they absolutely need tobacco or sugary treats to feel any sense of enjoyment, are they really free or are they slaves to those cravings?
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking way to look at it. So Stoic freedom, then, is about cultivating that capacity to strategically renounce those immediate pleasures, to tolerate some discomfort even. because that ultimately leads to greater agency and self-determination.
Exactly like the transcript says, if you need less, you are more free.
And when we free ourselves from the tyranny of our desires, it allows us to focus on what's truly essential.
Yeah, and the transcript emphasizes the importance of defining our core goals and priorities.
Because without that clarity, we can easily get caught up in chasing after things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
Right, it's like having a compass that helps us navigate through life's distractions and stay focused on what truly matters.
And the Stoics recommend this practice of daily reflection, to evaluate whether our actions are aligned with those goals and whether those goals are truly important and within our sphere of control.
It's about being intentional with our time and energy, making sure we're investing them in the right places.
So let's put it all together. What does it actually mean to be a Stoic? According to this ideal that the transcript paints.
Well, the transcript describes someone who strives for objectivity in their view of themselves and the world, someone who thinks rationally, acts virtuously, and understands the difference between what they can and can't control.
Right. They focus their efforts on those things within their sphere of influence, and they accept what they can't change.
They're aware of their impulses, but they've learned to manage and direct them effectively.
They pay attention to the details of life without getting lost in trivialities. They learn from the past, but they don't dwell on it.
They consider the future, but they don't let anxieties about what might happen consume them.
They see external things like possessions, reputation, health as ultimately indifferent to their core virtue, although some are naturally preferred.
They work diligently towards their goals, but they accept that the outcome isn't always entirely within their control.
They're not driven primarily by wealth or fame, although they might achieve those things as a byproduct of their virtuous actions.
They maintain a sense of inner peace and stability regardless of what's happening around them.
They enjoy pleasures in moderation without becoming enslaved by them.
They value meaningful connections, but they're also content in their own company.
They don't seek out hardship, but when it arises, they face it with calmness and resilience.
And they see obstacles as opportunities for growth.
The transcript points out that the true Stoic, the Sophos or wise person, is ultimately an ideal, something to strive for.
It's like aiming for excellence in any field. You might not achieve perfection, but the pursuit of that ideal elevates you.
And it's that continuous striving that helps us become the best versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And setbacks and failures are seen as opportunities for reflection and course correction, not for self-punishment.
So it's really about progress over perfection, right?
Absolutely. And Stoicism provides this incredibly rich toolbox of mental techniques to support us on that journey.
Yeah, it's not just a set of principles. It's a practical philosophy with tools for navigating the challenges of life.
The transcript mentions a few examples like cognitive distancing the view from above, voluntary discomfort, and gratitude.
All these techniques for reframing our thoughts, managing our emotions, and cultivating that inner resilience.
And to really appreciate the depth of these ideas, it's helpful to know a bit about the key figures who shaped Stoic thought.
Yeah, beyond Zeno himself, there's this whole lineage of incredible thinkers who contributed to this philosophy.
Right, so we have Cleanthes, Zeno's successor, who really expanded on his ideas.
And Chrysippus, who's often credited with systemizing and refining a lot of those core doctrines.
Then there's Panaetius, who was instrumental in introducing Stoicism to Roman society.
And Posidonius, this fascinating polymath, who even integrated some non-Stoic ideas into his own philosophy.
And then, of course, we have Seneca, who was both a statesman and a writer, and his works are still widely read today.
Right, he applied Stoic principles to politics, to everyday life, even to dealing with grief and loss.
And then we have Musonius Rufus, who was a really influential teacher known for his emphasis on practical ethics.
And of course, we can't forget Epictetus, who went from being a slave to a renowned philosopher and teacher.
His teachings really highlight the power of Stoicism to overcome adversity and find inner freedom.
And then there's Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, whose personal writings, meditations, offer this incredible glimpse into how he applied Stoicism to the challenges of leadership.
His writings are so relatable. Even today, they show how these ancient principles can be applied to modern life.
And it's worth noting that countless other historical figures across various fields have found wisdom and guidance in Stoicism.
It really speaks to the universality and enduring relevance of these ideas.
The transcript also mentions this really powerful metaphor for Marcus Aurelius, the idea of the inner citadel.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So it's this concept of our mind as an unshakable fortress, a place of refuge that remains untouched by those external storms, the chaos, the fear, the anger.
It's about cultivating that inner strength and objectivity, so our well-being isn't solely dependent on what's happening outside of us.
Yeah, it's about creating that internal space of peace and stability, even when the world around us feels chaotic.
Exactly. So no matter what challenges or disappointments we face, we can always retreat to that inner citadel and find a sense of grounding.
Now, for our listeners who want to explore specific applications of Stoicism, the transcript recommends checking out some of our previous content.
Right, we've done deep dives on topics like grief loss, sadness, time management, regret, anger management, and resilience in the face of adversity.
All themes that are closely related to Stoic principles and practices.
And for those who are interested in further reading the transcript, suggest starting with Invicto, which comes from the same YouTube channel.
Great, and then moving on to some contemporary authors who have done a really great job of making Stoicism accessible to modern readers.
Like Ryan Holiday with The Obstacle is the Way.
And William B. Irvine's A Guide to the Good Life.
And Massimo Pigliucci's How to be a Stoic.
And for those who want to go straight to the source material, the classical texts are definitely worth exploring.
Yeah, like Seneca's Consolations, Dialogues, and Moral Letters to Lucilius.
And Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, along with Pierre Hadot's The Inner Citadel, which provides a really helpful framework for understanding Aurelius's work.
And lastly, Epictetus's Enchiridion, which was compiled by his student Arian, and it's full of practical and very direct advice.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Stoicism, it's clear that this philosophy offers a wealth of insights and incredibly practical tools for navigating the complexities of life.
Yeah, it's a philosophy that stood the test of time for a reason.
And the key takeaway, I think, is that it's not about achieving some unattainable state of perfection. It's about progress. It's about that continuous journey of learning and refinement.
Exactly. It's about striving to become the best versions of ourselves, one step at a time.
And on that note, we want to leave you with a final thought to consider: what is one specific area of your life where you could apply a Stoic principle?
Maybe it's focusing on what you can control, or maybe it's questioning those initial judgments and perceptions.
How could shifting your perspective in that one area lead to a more positive and fulfilling experience?
Take some time this week to really reflect on that.
And thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Stoicism.
We'll see you next time.